Hi, I'm Lisa Carlsen, head women's basketball coach at Lewis University, and this is Lewis Spotlight. Well, I think my life growing up was probably very, very different than it is for kids today. You know, life back then in small town Iowa was simple. It wasn't the same stressors that kids have today. We got up and went to school and came home, played outside, and my family was very stable. I was lucky enough to have great parents. I'm the oldest of 4. So a lot of my memories are of spending time with my family on summer vacations, jumping in the camper and taking off for a couple weeks and going to different places to see around the country, as well as being lucky enough to be close enough to my grandparents on both sides where we spent weekends with them and trips with them and just running over there after school and having grandma make brownies or whatever it is. So I think my life growing up and most of my memories are of really spending time with my family and my grandparents and my extended family just about every day. I don't know that there was a point in my life where I knew that athletics or being an athlete was going to be who I was or what I did. But we spent a lot of time, myself and my brother and sisters, playing outside, always having a ball. And both sides of my family were very active as far as being outside and having a ball and things like that. So I think it was just part of what we did. I remember times where my grandfather would grab a glove and a ball and we would play catch for hours on the weekends. So I don't know that at that time when I was young I thought, oh, I'm going to be an athlete. But if it's something that you do all the time and then as you get older you realize that maybe you can excel at that and it's something you're passionate about, I think that's how it kind of evolves. Again, different than today, we weren't involved in travel or AAU and things like that at a young age like kids are sometimes today, and it becomes such a big part of what they do. I think we did it because we just played outside and then you became better at it, and then by the time you got to high school and you really did start to think about it and you saw that you excelled at certain things, that's when it became more evident that, hey, maybe I can go on to college and do this and continue as an athlete. I think being an athlete shapes everything that I do on a daily basis and probably has for many, many, many years. What you learn in athletics as far as being a part of something bigger than yourself or being passionate about something that you have to work hard at every single day to excel in, I think all of those things really do shape who you are. A lot of it is becoming a very confident person, somebody who can think in a competitive manner in everything that they do and the way they go about their business. So do I think being an athlete shaped who I am? Absolutely. I think being a student athlete and then turning around and coaching student athletes has a great correlation. Some of the life lessons that I learned as an athlete and good and bad are things that I can draw from when I am talking to and coaching my athletes today, because at some point I went through some of those same things. When you talk about life lessons, many of those are learned off the court. And I talked about some of those, the competitive nature of the game and being confident and those kind of life lessons. But I think it also teaches you things like organizing your day and being able to do a lot of different things during the day that aren't necessarily something that maybe your counterpart as a student on campus has to do the way you do. So I think those things shape who you are. I think those things help you build confidence. I think those things really help guide and prepare you as you move on in life. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned in coaching, or maybe the most memorable or fun things about coaching, is watching someone walk through the door as a freshman or even during the recruiting process when they're in high school and seeing how they mature and evolve by the time they walk across the stage as a senior. I've had student athletes, many of them, who if I could show you snapshots of how they were as a freshman and then show you snapshots of how they've grown as a senior, there's such tremendous growth when they're in college. And I think those are the things that I'm most proud of and the stories I like to tell. Winning is awesome, cutting down nets is awesome, rings are awesome, that's all fine and dandy, but really the most enjoyable thing or the most memorable thing or the thing that I like the most is watching young people evolve into a whole different level of maturity as they're ready to really go out into the real world. I never thought I was going to get into coaching. You know, I was a two-sport athlete in college. Went to Northwest Missouri State, was a softball player and a basketball player, and the whole time I was in college, I thought I was going to go into corporate fitness. That was kind of always my goal and my dream. I was going to play ball, and then I was going to go to grad school, and that was going to be my life. I was going to go into corporate fitness. And in fact, that's what I did right out of grad school. I got a job with a small company in Omaha, and helped run the fitness center in a larger corporate setting. And it really wasn't until one of my mentors or my graduate coach said, hey, there's this part-time coaching position at one of the local small schools in town. And it was a softball position. She said, you should really do that because it's something you could do part-time while still doing your corporate fitness full-time job. And I said, well, why not? I might as well try it. You know, it wasn't something that I had been pursuing, but it's something she kind of pushed. And at that time when I started coaching softball at the collegiate level and I was doing it part-time, after about a couple years I realized that that's really where my heart lied. You know, that was where my passion was working with 18 to 22-year-olds as opposed to maybe working with 30 to 50-year-olds and trying to help them realize what their goals are as far as weight loss or physical fitness or whatever. But it was a whole different dynamic when it came to the clientele I was working with. So after about 4 years of coaching part-time, I thought, you know, if this is really what I want to do, if this is really where my heart lies, I got to try and do it full-time. And so kind of a leap of faith, I took a full-time coaching position at Wayne State coaching softball. And I never looked back from there. I knew that that's what I wanted to do because that was a lot more fun for me. I enjoyed getting up and going to work every single day. It wasn't until a year later when I was approached about an assistant basketball position that I came back to basketball. So really my coaching career started in softball. And again, I played both of those sports in college, so I felt like I could do either. But in this part of the country, it's cold. So coaching softball wasn't necessarily something that was great because I didn't like putting on a winter parka and shoveling the snow off the field. I figured if I can wear normal clothes in a gym, that would be way better. So that's kind of the evolution of how I got into coaching. But you know, a lot of people say, well, I knew that's what I wanted to do since the time I was little, or as soon as I went to college, I knew I wanted to coach. That really wasn't me. Not that I didn't want to do it, but it was never something that really crossed my mind. I didn't see myself progressing in that career until you know, a mentor kind of pushed that direction, and maybe she knew something I didn't at the time. The hard thing about coaching is it's a very fluid job. You know, there's times where people are continuing to try and climb the ladder in the profession for a lot of different reasons. I always thought if you're doing it right, you're going to have a very difficult time leaving your current team because there's a lot of connection, you spend a lot of time, and you grow very fond and attached to that current team. So I think the hardest thing when you're looking at pursuing another job is leaving your current group of student athletes and how that's going to affect things. But knowing that in coaching, that's something that happens fairly often. The other thing that I think is important is as you went through the process in coaching, the next job that you took most of the time was based on how is that going to affect your family. You know, when I started coaching and it was just myself and my husband, it was a little bit easier to pick up and go and move. But you looked at situations where maybe you could make more money, maybe you could elevate the level that you're coaching at. Maybe it was a great location, you know, maybe it was the people you were going to work for. There was a lot of different factors. But I think most of them were based on how is this going to affect my family, and is it a positive move for not just me but for everybody. You know, I've been at Lewis a long time. It's my longest tenure, and I've been coaching for about 20 years. You know, I came to Lewis from Winona State because it was an opportunity to again be a head coach and kind of run my own program. So I think that was probably the biggest factor. Another factor was I knew the administration at the time. The athletic director who was here was somebody I had worked with at Winona State, and so I had a very good rapport and familiarity with him, and he was pretty persuasive as far as trying to fill his position. So I came to Lewis for those reasons. I guess why I stay would be a little bit more about the comfort level that I have at a private institution who I feel like I can really exploit everything that I am in what I do from a coaching standpoint. And what keeps me at Lewis is the people. I've absolutely loved my teams, but I've also absolutely loved the people that I work with. And it makes it very difficult to leave when those two factors are so consistent over time. When you talk about the basketball team being one family and my family being another, and I love them equally. Sometimes, you have to be in the present. You have to be there for whatever family you're a part of at that time. I think if you treat coaching specifically just like a job, it's hard to excel because you're working with young people who look to you to guide them in a lot of different facets of their life. The combination of the two, I like to incorporate both as much as I can. If there's times that my family can be a part of the basketball family, I think that makes it easier. You feel like you're not missing out sometimes. But there's times where you have to be present for that group at that time during key moments. The thing about managing the two is I think you have to be passionate about both, and you have to really, really want to be good at both. Very early in my career, I had somebody tell me that that was impossible, that it wasn't something that you could do. You couldn't be a really good mom and be a really good coach because you couldn't manage both. It was too much. And I still remember that to this day, that challenge of proving them wrong. And again, I mentioned that incorporating the two is important, but there's certain times a year where you have to be okay with putting your heart and soul into one or the other. It's October and it's time to start the basketball season, and from October to March, basketball is a huge part of what we do. My family is very understanding of that, but there's also key moments for my kids that I know I need to be there for them and be present with them. And I think that they have been through it long enough and have a great understanding of that. And I do have times where I think they've been a huge part of what we do at Lewis on the court, supportive of what we do as a team. So I think that blend is important as well. Well, I have 4 kids. My oldest right now is a senior in high school. So he's going through the whole recruiting process. He's a baseball player. He would love to play at the collegiate level. So that's been a little bit interesting, sitting on the other side and not being the coach recruiting, but the parent going on visits and things like that. I have a freshman who's again thinks he's going to be the next all-star in everything that he does. So it's great to see him start his journey in high school. I have a 7th grader. So junior high is always interesting times. And the oldest 3 are all boys. And then my baby is 9. She's a 3rd grader, and she really is a part of everything that we do. She's lucky enough that she has 3 older brothers, but what she loves is that she has 15 older sisters. Her being able to come to practice and spend some time with the girls, and I would be surprised if she doesn't end up being a coach, because she already thinks that's what she wants to do. After her playing career is over, she wants to coach because that's what she sees mom do all the time. So she's probably more a part of what we do every day than anybody is. And I think a lot of that is age. The boys are really busy doing their thing, playing ball and hanging with their friends, and not that Lexi doesn't do that, but she's young enough to really, really want to be a part of this group at Lewis that she feels very close to. The thing I enjoy most outside of coaching is really being able to watch my kids play. Like I mentioned, they're all involved in different things, whether it be basketball or baseball or softball or whatever. So when I'm not at practice or I'm not at work, 90% of the time I'm probably sitting at a ball game watching them play. And a lot of people ask me, is that difficult as a coach, watching your kid play and being okay with how the game's going or how they're being coached or whatever. And I really find it pretty easy, to be honest with you, to sit in the stands and just enjoy them playing the game. Not that I don't always have an opinion on coaching, but most of the time it's not strategic. What I want is for them to have coaches who are going to teach them the basics and help them evolve into the player they can be. From that, I can really just sit back and be a fan. Being a mom and being a coach, I think is an interesting balance. I think the most important thing is the more organized you can be, the better. Because if I know how my day is structured, there may be certain times of the day that I really have to devote 100% to my team, and there may be other times that I have to devote 100% to my kids, depending on what they're doing and what's going on. So I think organization is huge, and I also think being present at the time that they need you to be present is important. And then opportunities to put the two together, I think, are always important. You know, if there's times that I can have my kids at practice, seeing what mom does at work, I think being able to combine that also makes it a lot easier, so you don't feel like you're missing out sometimes on one or the other. One of the most important life lessons at this point is not to get consumed and or stressed out about things that you can't control. I think all of our lives are very, very busy, and there's times that there's things that are out of your control that you can't let consume you, or it takes away from things that you do have control over. You know, I could make a list of 20 different life lessons learned, I think, from a coaching standpoint, or as an athlete, or as I get older and maybe more seasoned in my career. But the one thing that I think is probably one of the most important is that whole not allowing things that you can't control to consume what you do. I don't know if I would have a title to the class that my life would be, but I think the one thing it would teach is attitude can affect many outcomes in life. You know, I talked about not being stressed out about things you can't control, but I do believe that your attitude can help shape what you want to have happen in your life. So I would talk a lot and teach a lot in my class about how to make sure that your mind is right and your attitude is correct in pursuing the things that are important to you. I think that that's really important. I think it's something that can help keep people balanced, can keep people focused, because it's really easy, if your mind's not right, to not be able to go about your business in a productive way. I think the most difficult life lesson, when I really think about it, is really understanding that no matter how hard you try, you can't please everybody. You know, I remember very early in my career thinking, I got to do everything right, and I got to make everybody happy. And I think as I grew in my profession, I learned that that's just not possible. So you have to be true to who you are, and what is it about you that makes you you? Sometimes you're going to not have people that are very happy with you, and sometimes that's going to have to be okay. So as I matured, I think, in my profession, I think learning that you can't please everybody makes it a little bit easier in evolving into who you are. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've learned some life lessons from my story.